So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, and some of you really know this about me, but I want to ground us in where this comes from and why Genetic Alliance is doing this at all. My two kids were diagnosed in 1994 with a rare genetic disorder, and at the time there was no advocacy organizations doing any kind of work in research, essentially, and I had to discover ways to do this myself. And so put together a biobank, built a registry, discovered the gene myself at night in a lab where I borrowed bench space. We patented the gene in those days so that we could give it open access. It was the only way to do that. Thankfully, now that's quite easy. Moved on to do some clinical trials, drug screening, and so on, and have a number of clinical trials in development right now. All of this not to say, wow, that's a lot of really cool stuff, but to say, doing this before the internet was really born, doing this before any of these pathways were paved was really, really tough. And I found that I had to do a lot of novel searching, a lot of really expensive builds in terms of technology and in terms of policy development and so on. Lots of other advocacy groups came to us in our living room in 1995 and 96, 97 to do this too. And so I began to work with Genetic Alliance so that we might do this for all diseases. Next slide. And so Genetic Alliance, I joined in 2002 and started to build tools for all diseases. And I won't go into all of these. We have almost 100 tools overall, some of which are quite complex and have lots of moving parts. The one that I'm going to talk to you about today is the promise for engaging everyone responsibly. But suffice it to say that this almost grassroots, staying really connected to the community development that I had done with PXE, I brought over to Genetic Alliance and was able to expand and build on it all these years. Next slide. I have a TED talk on the principles here, which essentially are that the only way we're going to get the research enterprise to focus on the needs of people is for us to not only get a seat at the table, but to decide where the table will be, whose table is it, how are we going to decide the menu, who we're going to invite to the game, and so on. And so my TED talk focuses on that. Next slide. So in this dawn of age of people-driven research, I also wrote a bunch of papers. Partly I like to say because while I'm happy speaking Dory, we have to speak whale if we're going to talk to the research community. And so writing papers and putting research together that shows that advocacy communities are actually essential to the research process is critical. And even beyond that, that participants are central, not just in terms of lip service, but I think what you'll see today here is that we've actually been able to make this very, very real. So why does Genetic Alliance run a registry system? And I'm going to go over this in two slides. One is our philosophy. So we built this on the demand that to replicate the 1995 PXE International Registry. So all those years back, huge demand. Some of the most expansive registries in rare and common conditions are built on the basis of what we did in 1995. In 2003, we became very formal and established Genetic Alliance Registry and Biobank because there was no one else doing registries or biobanks that were run by advocacy communities and owned by them and managed by them. No one else wanted to do it. We went to a number of universities, we went to the NIH, and they all said in those days, there's really not any reason for advocacy groups to be in this business. This will always be the realm of academia or industry. I believed, and several of us did at that point, about 10 or 15 other advocacy groups joined me to start these two, that we really had to do this. We believe that communities are central to registries and studies and are the best long-term stewards, and I'm preaching to the choir here with all of you. We also believe that you, the communities, are the best representatives of their members' needs. We believe that people should control access to their data. And while that gets a lot of lip service, and you'll hear a lot of people say it, if you follow the data, trail it, track it, you'll see that it's ultimately sold. And in this system, it is not. We believe that people should receive the results of their tests and studies. And this is now also a very popular idea, but boy, did we get a lot of pushback many, many years, decades actually, about returning results to individuals. And we should believe the biomedical industrial complex should be in service to those who need it and not off on its own tangents. Next slide. And so, in terms of the methods and processes, we have too much in common, has been my thought since the very beginning, that registries must be cross condition. And so, starting in 2003, that's exactly what Genetic Alliance did, is one system for many diseases, because we're going to need to study pathways that suddenly are connected to one another when we really do discover what's working and not working in the various conditions we have. Data standards and quality are paramount. Another thing that from the very beginning, we've been working really hard on making sure that we are in fact either establishing data standards, because in some cases, before there was even words like PRO, patient reported outcomes, we were actually collecting those and standardizing them. Privacy and security requirements must be met and exceeded in the service of the goals, and we'll talk a bit about that today. That has obviously gotten much more attention, and again, something that we tried to emphasize years ago, and there was fell on deaf ears pretty much. Um, we believe that collaborative learning should be a part of this process, that and I think we in the advocacy community have done a pretty good job of this, that we learn from each other and that we are better for having worked with each other. For our registry system, a consortium based governance is critical, that we can't decide that somebody makes decisions from the top down, or we follow one institution's guidelines, et cetera. And so we have a consortium running peer, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. I believe there's new business models finally emerging, and we're supporting those through Peer. It's built on purpose to actually turn a new flywheel and create new business models that essentially will raise all boats and will allow all of us to have the resources we need. And that the mechanism should be as easy as other collective solutions. And one of my examples for this is in 1995, when I created the first PXE website, I coded a shopping cart in HTML, and it was really, really hard. And now, we all just take a PayPal button or a Venmo number or whatever else, and we don't even think about it. There's no arguing about there's certainly arguing about which one of these we'll use, but not about how to do this. And so we're trying to make registries as simple as that. Next slide. So evolution from 2003 till now. So 2003, we established the biobank, we established the registry, we established our own IRB, because we felt that there weren't IRBs, and we did try to use Western and some universities that understood people-centered research in 2003. And we used FileMaker Pro as our first database software, and I have there, don't laugh. It was a good, robust attempt, and some people would say FileMaker's quite a good program. Obviously doesn't have the things we need today. We transferred everything in 2008 to REDCap and ran on REDCap for several years, but ran into a whole bunch of problems with REDCap. For one, it's not so people-centered, it's more institution-centered, more researcher-centered. We wanted to do across the board, across condition, across projects, collaborations, and it didn't really allow it then. It does to some extent now, but still didn't do what we needed in terms of longitudinality and also people centricity. In 2014, we partnered with a small company called Private Access and created a solution that would allow each person to control their data. And in 2019, we forged a partnership with Luna PBC. PBC is Public Benefit Corp, that runs LunaDNA, which is the technology platform. This was on the heels of years of working with the folks who established Luna, and you'll hear about this momentarily. Because Luna was really able to implement not only what we believed, but even more than we could imagine, it was the right partner for us. And so Peer in 2019 shifted all its underlying technology to Luna PBC. Next slide. And so I'm going to hand this over to Dawn Berry, who I'm happy to say, happy birthday, Dawn, first of all. Today's Dawn's birthday. And then secondly, Dawn is not only a wonderful collaborator for Genetic Alliance, but a good friend to all of us. We're really working hand in hand and enjoying that in the process, which makes it really a terrific partnership.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks everybody for being here today. I'll say I'm just grateful to work with Genetic Alliance, having started that relationship back at Illumina, and the team we work with here at Luna really came from Illumina. So a lot of shared relationships, shared vision and passion here. So I'm just going to give you a little kickoff for where we started, and then we'll go right into what we've built here. And I wanted to share first, I think it's important to share values. These values not only guide us, but are built into our platform. And that is that we're here to promote people from subjects of research to partners in discovery. We think that's a beautiful mission. Next slide. And it's not only the right thing to do. It's so much more than that. So the right thing to do in terms of promoting people, because a lot of you have studied this, and this goes back to when I was at Illumina. People have concerns over data security and privacy, but they believe in the opportunity for groundbreaking medical advancements, but they need to control how their data is used and have strong preferences in that value being shared with them. And fair enough. But this is bigger than that. And I would argue there is a research imperative here to doing right by people, which will also do right by science and discovery. So just to break this down, we have a global data sharing community. We have participants from over 182 countries because people have and can share data themselves. We can start to break these long-standing institutional and geographic silos that have long stymied research. Number two, by working directly with people, we can bring in that dynamic, those external influencers that we know are so critical disease, but for some reason now are just seeming to gain traction. Number three, we are earning the trust of communities that have historical distrust for traditional research institutions. Again, because we're delivering control, we're delivering protection, we're being transparent. All of those have been operationalized. Number four, and I'll go into this more in the next slide, we take the stance that privacy will empower research. So while a lot of groups are in Sacramento shaking their fists about these privacy laws, we think they're a good thing. And I'll tell you more about that next. And lastly, there are a lot of regulatory requirements now, as you know, for longitudinal, patient-reported, post-market surveillance. When we work with people, we can have that long-standing relationship. Next slide. This alphabet soup of privacy laws is the best we've got in the U.S. and across the world right now. And I'll suffice it to say that we worry about this, so you and your researchers partners don't have to. The privacy space is complex, it's ever evolving, and it's also very important. We exist in an age of AI and re-identification. HIPAA is not enough. Also, many studies, just to gain that critical mass, require global participation. So GDPR started this trend of transitioning digital data privacy from institutions to individuals. We think that's a good thing. California followed suit within the US. And today we have a CIO who's closely involved in the federal legislative committees. We've also worked with Senator Hershberg's office in California in the lead up to CPRA. And we've collaborated with Europe and Privion on data protections and these impact assessments for compliance with GDPR. So a long way of saying we worry about this stuff so that you folks and your research partners don't have to. Next slide. So what we're going to show you today is the platform that's up and running and really delivering great things right now. And what I want to leave you with is what's special here, besides the tech and the associated programs that we have at Genetic Alliance that you're going to see today. Firstly, this is more than tech. This is about reimagining relationships and delivering value to all constituents, not just where in the future where an intervention is being developed, but through data today that can impact communities and the people that they exist to serve, to have more immediate returns on that data investment of people. This is truly, as Sharon said, a people-first system: control, privacy by design, transparency, reciprocity, governance, all built in to honor the individual. Next, this is comprehensive: omics, clinical medical data, patient-reported outcomes, all longitudinal, dynamic, so continuous learning environment, not a one-and-done study. We need to move beyond one-and-done study. Next is data stays with the people and with the communities. Because it's continuously being enriched, it's a renewable resource. We have to, as a whole group of people, we have to get away from this data as the new oil. That's bad. We need data as a renewable resource where you can invite infinite questions to the data, infinite researchers, and we can start reducing that patient fatigue. Another core premise of this platform is the ability to pivot between basic research and clinical investigation. Imagine how much more efficient that will be. We can speed up answers tremendously by not, again, doing episodic linear research, but more in parallel. And lastly, Stay connected with privacy protected people, recruit them into a future study, ask them a question you forgot about, poke at them to take action. This is about a relationship, a long-term relationship. So as I said, this is all built, it's delivering value, and we are just so excited to share it with you today. So thanks again for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.